Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 p.m. on September 10th, and I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the Richfield City Council. If you are able, please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are now at the open forum portion of the meeting. And if you are listening online, you can call into the open forum by dialing 1-415-655-0001. Use webinar access code 2634-781-8135 and password 1234. Is there anybody currently online? All right, we'll leave the information up there so people know how to call in. I have two people that have submitted requests that are here in the room, and I believe the city manager has a number of emails that were sent in and requested to be read. And we'll be timing all of these for 3 minutes, whether it's an email or whether it is an in-person resident that's giving the feedback. So first of all, when you're giving your feedback, can you please state your name and your address? And you'll have 3 minutes. And so I'm going to welcome Kathleen Balaban first. Thank you.
Do you want me to sign in, or do you have my card?
I have your card, so
Okay.
as long as you fill out the card, you're good to go.
Okay.
Thank you for checking.
Yeah. My name is Kathleen Balaban. I live on 65th and Stevens Avenue South. And what I'd like to talk about today is on your computers, you have the agenda, you have the packet. And I have pages 330 through 336 here. And it's the audit report. And what it says here is our material weaknesses, where we lack segregation of accounting duties due to a limited number of office employees. We go down further and it talks about the material audit adjustments detected as a result of this audit procedures. The next page, it talks about the ice arena and the receipts don't match the revenue accounts. It talks about, the next page, it talks about other deficiencies. And the next page talks about further deficiencies. Talks about not having procedures, major losses. These things that I've talked about to you over the years about lacking procedures, policies, processes, it's here, it shows up here. It goes on to page 333. While our audit provided a reasonable basis for our opinion, it did not provide a legal determination on the city's compliances with those requirements. It goes on through 6 pages of poor management of our accounting systems. I clearly now understand why our new finance director doesn't want to work here anymore. Plain and simple. We have some serious issues in our accounting process and how we read our budgets. And it states it in the audit. Please look at that. Please think about that. And think about how we're going forward in the future, because this is not it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will welcome Larry Ernster.
Good evening, Council. My name is Larry Ernster. I live at 6727 Elliott Avenue South. Tonight, item B of the consent council calendar is a resolution approving the budget for the Affordable Housing Act. I am in support of this fund because I support homeowners and home ownership. However, at the August 14th meeting, my wife and I posted a series of questions to the city manager that seem to conflict with the goals of the Affordable Housing Trust. Specifically, while the trust fund is wanting to help individuals purchase homes, the city is systematically destroying homes, destroying entire neighborhoods, eliminating opportunities, in fact, eliminating the possibility of home ownership by eliminating over 30 single-family homes. I must again point out that homeowners pay the majority share of property taxes in the city, and that homeowners fund the majority of the city budget, which is on the docket tonight. It has been nearly a month since August 14th when we first posed these questions to the city managers, and they are: question number one, what documentation declares that the state-level microunit ordinance 327.30 specifically applies to home-ruled cities? Question number two, 3 supportive building developments at Penn Station, MICC Compound, Astor Commons require 14 buildable lots. My questions are, after they are built, which ones will be paying property taxes? And which ones will require additional taxpayer support and assistance? And how is that additional support going to be budgeted and generated? Question number 3, the 2040 plan intends to rezone 33 residential homes at 75th and Morgan to MR2. What is the city's authority to rezone these residential homes? And have you notified the residents of these homes of the intended rezoning? And lastly, does the city intend to destroy the market value of these 33 homes by rezoning and destroying the neighborhood so that some developer can swoop in and buy them at fire sale prices? I will again provide the city manager a copy of these questions, and I await her response. Thank you. And I'll be leaving early to watch the debates tonight.
Just since you're leaving early, I believe the city manager was planning to answer those during her report, so make sure you watch online. It was my understanding she was going to answer your questions, so if we're not to that point by the time you get there, I want to make sure you get the answers to your questions.
Good.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak? This is our one chance for people to speak if anyone wishes to come forward and say anything. Is there anybody online? I believe that City Manager Rodriguez has a number of email submissions, and I'll do the same for those as far as timing and that type of thing.
Thank you, Mayor. The first email is from, and I apologize if I get names wrong, Carrie Seeley-Dierzek, and she writes, "Good evening, Richfield leaders. I'm reaching out with some concerns about the balance of our public safety budget. I know we have excellent police and safety officers in Richfield, but I would like to see more funds being allocated for social workers, mental health responders, and crime prevention. Based on what I understand, it appears that only $25,000 is being spent on mental health and prevention out of $1 million. I would like to see a better balance in this funding. Could this be increased to $300,000? This would be a more balanced allocation of prevention and reactive measures. As a former teacher and school administrator, I know how important these services are for children and parents who are struggling in our communities." And then asked me to read it tonight. The next one is from James Jaffe. His message is, "Hello, my name is James Jaffe and I live at 6900 Blaisdell Avenue, South Minneapolis. I am very interested in the conversation around the upcoming city public safety budget, and I would appreciate it if my comments could be read at the open forum on Tuesday. I have been a Richfield resident since 2019, first as a renter and now as a homeowner. I appreciate the professionalism of the Richfield Police Department and the hard work that officers put into maintaining a positive relationship with the community. I support the $700,000 in the proposed public safety budget as endorsed by the police union. The city must show our officers that we need them and will compensate and equip them appropriately. However, I would like Richfield to consider alternative uses for the additional $300,000 in the public safety budget. The police are faced with an ever-growing number of calls for mental health crises and medical emergencies. More and more of the officers' time is taken up with calls that may not require an armed officer. I would like to see an expansion of the department's paramedic, social worker, and mental health professional staff. I think that these resources would help relieve the current heavy call load and continue moving Richfield Public Safety towards a more holistic approach to policing. I love living in Richfield, and I look forward to what we can accomplish together for our shared future. Thank you for your time. The next email is from Megan Paul. Dear Mayor and City Council members, my name is Megan Paul, and I am one of your constituents in Richfield. As someone with an interest in public safety, I am hoping that the Richfield City budget, while still supporting our police, can also invest in alternative models of public safety. Alternative models may include investing in the mental health of our community with trained behavioral health responders, taking a preventative approach to violence and crime by investing in the needs of our community and providing rehabilitation efforts for those with prior offenses, among other resources. Please consider a joint investment in alternative models for public safety alongside investing in our police. Alternative models also serve as a form of support for the work our police officers already do, and they deserve various alternative models of support. Thank you for your time in reading this email. I would like to request that it be read during the open forum on Tuesday. Our next email is from D. Erickson at 6718 Clinton Avenue. And good evening, Mayor Supple and esteemed members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion on an issue that is being discussed. I come before you not only as a concerned resident of our community, but as someone who deeply believes in the power of collaboration and constructive dialogue. The decisions made in this chamber have a profound impact on the lives of all of us, and I would like to respectfully share my thoughts on the following. A group is proposing to take the money allotted to hire 2 more officers and instead hire a paramedic and social worker. I'm opposed to this. While I respect and value the roles of paramedics and social workers in addressing critical social and health issues in our community, I firmly believe that our first priority should be enhancing public safety. Our police officers are already stretched thin, and in a time when crime and emergency response demands are growing, we cannot afford to weaken our capacity to ensure the safety of our neighborhoods. Law enforcement officers are uniquely trained to handle dangerous and unpredictable situations that can't always be addressed by social services or healthcare professionals alone. I would like to point out that we have a full-time on-duty fire department who have excellent response times for emergencies. Balancing public safety with social services is important, but we need to ensure our city remains well protected. I urge the council to reconsider this proposal and retain the resources for law enforcement as initially intended. Thank you for your consideration. Our next email is from Rory Coleman Woods. I am writing to provide my comments as a potential council member regarding the city's budget reallocation for public safety. While I holistically support the need for our public safety officers, our traditional model of public safety needs to progress with the state of the community. We are in great need for alternative responses to the safety of our community members. From my understanding, that alternative response team has only an available 1 shift out of 4 shifts and shared with Edina. I believe we need to invest in more shifts in order to meet the greater needs of the community. I would agree with other council members that are leaning towards the allocation of $300,000 to the behavioral crisis response and alternative response teams. I also agree with the need to keep the good officers that we do have and to retain that good talent. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting and would please request that these comments be read at this evening's meeting. The next, and I believe this is the final comment that was sent in, and this is from Gina Von Arnhem, and I believe it's on behalf of a group. We have received the Axtel Group's Richfield Department of Public Safety Organizational and Staffing Assessment Report. It notes that, and this is in parentheses, while the population, the number of calls for service, and crime in Richfield have remained relatively steady, the demand on the city's police officers have increased significantly. Officers are responding to a growing number of mental health calls, often received under a different call type and difficult to predict or recognize until officers arrive, which often require more time on scene. Additionally, more training is required of officers. Social media, cell phones, and other technology have made investigations more complex. That's page 3 of the Axtel report. The report goes on that while, again in parentheses, while the RPD has adjusted its services and training to meet changing needs, TAG found that staffing and scheduling have remained largely unchanged for decades, page 3. This has led to many of our officers frequently eschewing their own vacation time to respond to this increase in volume, as they worry that if they do so, their colleagues will be unfairly burdened with the additional work. With this comes stress, mental health fatigue, and adverse effects on retention, and the concern that this pace is ultimately unsustainable. To address the concerns related to the current staffing levels and retention, the preliminary 2025 Richfield includes funding for wages increases for the current officers and lieutenants. The public safety budget increase also adds officer positions, and while it is understandable that this is one suggested solution, there are other ways that this approximately $300,000 could be used. Research and experience show the high value of having additional embedded social workers in the police force. Is any of the funding slated for this? For example, since Richfield is basing the alternative response team pilot on Brooklyn Center's successful approach, we know that it is very likely going to call for funding at least one additional embedded social worker and EMT in order to be able to have multiple shifts. Research is also showing nationwide stopping people for low-level traffic violations is not contributing to a reduction in crime. Is there an effort to discontinue this practice in Richfield, thus freeing up time for our overworked police officers? If this practice needs to be continued because of state, county regulations, does the strategic plan include lobbying efforts by the city and the police department to ask our legislators to pass the required legislation? We believe that this remaining funding could be used to increase the number of embedded social service workers, continue to provide training to dispatch and officers on how to handle the growing number of mental health calls, or to reduce the time on the scene, and to support lobbying efforts to stop using valuable police time on infractions that do not contribute to reduced crime. Thank you, Richfield, for equitable public safety. And that's the final one.
Thank you. Has anyone else logged in online? Okay, and then I'll do a last call if there's anyone in the room that wishes to speak. Okay, we will then close out the open forum. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who participated. Could you hand this over to the city clerk? Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to approval of the minutes of the City Council work session of August 14th, 2024, City Council meeting of August 14th, 2024, the special City Council meeting of August 15th, 2024, and the special City Council work session of August 20th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve those 4 sets of minutes. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, we have approved those. Next, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
So move. Approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded to move approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? We have approved the agenda. Next, we're going to move to the proclamation celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and I would like to welcome Miguel Hernandez to join me to receive the proclamation. The microphone. It is working. Okay, thank you. This is a proclamation of the City of Richfield. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is an annual celebration of the history and culture of the U.S. Latino and Hispanic communities. Whereas September 15th marks the anniversary of independence for 5 Latin American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. They all declared their independence in 1821. In addition, Mexico, Chile, and Belize celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th, September 18th, and September 21st. Whereas Lyndon B. Johnson on this day in 1968 signed the National Hispanic Heritage Week bill into law, from 1968 until 1988, Presidents Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan all issued yearly proclamations setting aside a week to honor Hispanic Americans. Whereas in 1987, U.S. Representative Esteban E. Torres of California proposed expanding the observance to cover its current 31-day period. And in 1988, Senator Paul Simon of Illinois submitted a similar bill that successfully passed Congress and was signed into law by President Ronald Reagan on August 17, 1988. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Week was expanded from 1 week to 1 month, on September 14, 1989, President George H.W. Bush became the first president to declare the 31 days from September 15th to October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas in the decades since National Hispanic Heritage Month, proclamations have been made by every sitting president of the United States. Whereas the National Hispanic Heritage Month 2024 will last from Sunday, September 15th, 2024 through Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. The event commemorates how those communities have influenced and contributed to American society and our nation with the strength of closely knit families and proud communities that help to build and defend our nation. Now, therefore, I, Mary Supple, Mayor of Richfield, on behalf of the Richfield City Council, do hereby proclaim September 15th, 2024 through October 15th, 2024 as National Hispanic Heritage Month in Richfield, and call on the people of Richfield to observe this period with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies, and continue to honor the contributions of our Hispanic American community. Proclaim this 10th day of September, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hernandez, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, hello and thank you for having me. It's good to see new friends and old. My name is Miguel and Hernandez, and I have worked at El Tejaban since I could. I would like to bestow this honor, this proclamation, to my parents. I think about heritage and honor and what being Latino, Chicano, or Hispanic is, and I think about the immigrant class that has brought all the great heritage and culture to Richfield, to Minnesota. And without them, we wouldn't have great culture. We wouldn't be able to be who we are today here. So it's with a great honor to, celebrate my parents who have been here for 16 years at El Tejaban Mexican Grill. Without their support, I've seen them not only, hire and work with the community, but also mentor and be leaders in the community, as long as there's so many other business leaders here who are Hispanic, Latino, or Chicano. And without them, I could say that we wouldn't be able to take the next step as a new generation honoring culture here in Richfield. So, yeah, thank you for having me, and this means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. You can keep it, yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wanted to say anything as I'm walking back?
I just want to thank Miguel and his family for being incredible community members, and As somebody else who's also been here for 4 generations of Latinos here in Richfield, we appreciate your leadership and we appreciate how we collectively can participate in our city. And I'm glad that you were able to represent all of us here today. So thank you.
Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for all your contributions to our community. All right, next we'll move on to our audit review. And so I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Rodriguez to introduce the presenters.
Actually, I'll turn it over to Finance Director Kumud Verma.
Thank you, Katie. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm pleased to inform you that the 2023 annual financial audit has been successfully completed. The city engaged audit firm Bergen KDV to conduct a comprehensive review of our financial records and transactions. The auditors have provided an unmodified audit opinion. The audit report has been submitted to the State Auditor Office and to the Government Finance Officers Association. The city shall also publish the summary audited statement in the local newspaper. On behalf of the Finance Department, I would like to extend sincere thanks to the City Manager, Department Directors, and their staff for their support and collaboration throughout the audit process. Today, we have with us Caroline Stutzman from Bergen KDV to present the audited financial results. Caroline is an audit shareholder with Bergen KDV. She has been with the firm for 24 years and has worked on the City of Richfield audit since KDV began working with the city for audit services. With that, over to Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything that's on the screen? And while they're working on that, can you introduce yourself again? Thank you.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Caroline Stutzman, so I am the partner involved in the audit for the City of Richfield. We do have a PowerPoint presentation to walk through tonight with a summary of the results. Is it on, or do I need to just lean in a little more?
You just have to talk louder.
Talk louder, too. All right, I can do that. Thank you.
All right, we have the document camera on, but not the PowerPoint.
That should turn it on.
We're getting closer.
Yeah. I see it on your screen.
Thank you for your patience. While we're doing that, I do have to admit to being a kind of a geek because I was really enjoying reading the statistical information. So there's lots of good pages of stats if you're curious about all things Richfield. So I would point people to looking at things like pages 323 in the agenda packet. So if anybody else is a data nerd, you can look at that too. All right, now that I've talked and we've got this going, I think we're ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for patience. Oh, we lost the screen.
Well,
Spoke a little too fast.
it worked and then it didn't.
There we
There
go.
you go.
All right, I'm not going to touch
Thank
anything for a minute here. The main reason you ask us to work with you is to provide an opinion on your financial statements. That opinion is housed within the independent auditor's report. Also within the independent auditor's report, both management's responsibility as well as our responsibilities is outlined. So management's responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. What that means is management determines the numbers, then our responsibility is to audit that information and provide the opinion. We aren't allowed to do both. Standards don't allow that, a line drawn in the sand, if you will. The opinion we're providing is what's called an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level that you can receive and not a change from previous years, meaning we believe the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of December 31st, 2023. Outside of looking at the numbers, we also conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That requires us to consider internal controls as we go throughout that process. There are a couple of items listed there this year in relation to that. We did discuss those in detail with management. Wasn't going to go through them in detail with you here unless you had specific questions. But the first one I will just high level discuss that is very, very common for cities or other governmental entities, any entities for that matter, to have lack of segregation of accounting duties. Duties overlap occasionally, especially in times of turnover. So that is common for, I would say, 90 to 95% of our clients. An additional component, because the city received or spent more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures, a single audit is required. The two programs that we tested were the Highway Planning and Construction Program, as well as the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. There were no findings related to either of those additional components. And then one final component before we look at the numbers is in relation to Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor compiles a number of state statutes that they ask us to ask a number of questions about. We did not have any findings related to any of that either.
All right, before we go on, does anyone have any questions? I had one for the city manager. I had asked you earlier, and I think it should be stated publicly, with regard to the findings that were made, what have we done to correct those? If you could tell me about that.
Yeah, and Finance Director Kamud Verma can correct me at any time, but in terms of staff turnover, we have stabilized our staff, and we are fully staffed, and actually we have a proposal in the budget to add an additional person to help with the segregation of duties until we can modernize our processes, and we may be able to eliminate that position over attrition, but we'll see. Also, we hired a really key position. We have a new payroll accountant who had a lot of experience and is very adept at our current accounting program, and she has stabilized that, and we're making good progress and making improvements there as well. And then with the ice arena, they're going to do an Excel program to track it in the Excel program, so we don't have that problem again. And then they're going to make sure that that tracks with the various reports in JDE, and then also their software that they use for their programs. And I think I've got it all. Thank you. Correct, but some of that work was done in 2024, so there could still be findings in the 2024 report, but it has now been rectified. But it was during 2024, so does that actually make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Yes. With that, we'll move on to summary financial information, and we begin here with the general fund. Looking at total revenues, total expenditures, as well as fund balance. So at the end of the day, fund balance for the general fund did increase by just under $500,000 and ended the year at a total fund balance of just under $11.5 million. And that represents 40% of the general fund expenditures based on 2023 spending levels. That's total fund balance, so there is a portion that's considered non-spendable. It's related to prepaids. You've already spent those dollars, so you can't use them for future operations. That leaves unassigned, and that unassigned balance is what your fund balance policy is related to or looks at. And your fund balance policy indicates that you would strive to have 40% of unassigned fund balance, 40% of current expenditures in unassigned fund balance. You have 39.8 if we run the calculation, so you're very close to that goal that you've established for yourselves. And here we have a little bit of a deeper dive into the general fund revenues. In total, revenues increased by 1.3 million with some fluctuations happening between the categories that you see presented there. Property taxes increasing, as well as miscellaneous revenues in relation to interest income and just the market conditions at the end of the year, December 31st, right at that snapshot, and then decreases in the licenses and permits with less building activity for the year. And then a similar presentation here for general fund expenditures. Expenditures increased 5.6%, with wages across the departments that you're seeing there being a component, as well as purchase of extraction equipment in the fire department, as well as equipment purchases and recreation services. And here we have a budget to actual snapshot. So the first column there is the final budget, anticipating a break-even year. That middle column is the actual results, where we see that total increase there at the bottom. And then the far right column is the variance column. So looking at total revenues there in that variance column, if we apply a percentage to that variance, it is 2.3%. And then if we look at kind of some of the above categories there, seeing that investment income is over budgeted, and again, that's due to conservative budgeting, because that number can be very volatile based on market conditions, and we've experienced that over the last few years where that can fluctuate. So very common for that to be on the conservative side of things. And then on the expenditure side of things, if we follow the chart down, total expenditures, if we apply a percentage to that variance, it's 0.4%, so very close from a percentage standpoint to the plan that you had established for yourselves. Next, we have tax capacity, the levy and the tax capacity rates. So taxable tax capacity, the dark blue there, has increased at a greater rate than the levy percentage has than the levy has increased. So as a result, that tax capacity rate has decreased, mostly driven by market values this year. So next we switch gears to your enterprise funds, and we begin with your liquor fund here. Sales for the liquor fund decreased just under 2%, and cost of sales decreased as well. The impact of that was the gross profit percentage increased to 27% for the year. And here we have some comparison to some neighboring cities, as well as the metro average. So showing that that you did increase for the year, but still slightly below the metro stores we have included here, as well as that metro state average. Seeing a nice improvement there. Water and Sewer Utilities Fund is the next fund that we have. Charges for services did increase this year as a result, or due to increased rates, and then operating expenses increased as well, but actually pretty consistent, changing by only 0.1%. At the end of the day, operating income for the fund, both with and without depreciation expense, and we include that kind of as a means for you to analyze those charges for services to help set dollars aside for future replacement of capital assets, because that's a significant dollar investment for you when the time comes up for that. So it's an analysis for that. And when you're seeing both the orange and the gray bars above the line there, it's indicating you're fully covering depreciation expense with the charges for services that you currently have. Similar presentation here for the Storm Sewer Fund. Charges for services increased here as well, and operating expenses increased. You had the Sheridan Pond dredging project, as well as some increased street sweeping costs for the year. So seeing an increase in the expenses for the year, which did lead to that operating loss for the year. And that is common in storm sewer funds in years of projects, that there's kind of a buildup for the project and then spending that down. So also a common theme. And so if we analyze then the orange bar and the gray bar, charges for services for the current year are covering about 75% of depreciation expense. And again, a year of project costs, so keeping that in mind as well. The last two charts that we have for you take a little bit of a different look, and it compiles all of your governmental funds together, so debt service funds, capital project funds, special revenue funds, all together. And we then have the ability to compare to some statewide average information as well from 2022 and prior. So starting with that analysis, it is by population. So when you compare 2022 to the population. Some things just of note there. City of Richfield has lower special assessments than the statewide average and higher property taxes as a result of that. And then intergovernmental revenues is also a component that is a bit higher for you for 2022. Then when we look at 2023, some changes just to note there would be that those intergovernmental revenues were going down a little bit with the spending down of the ARPA and COVID dollars as that's working its way through, and an increase in the levy there. And then the last piece is looking at that same information, just now the expenditure side of things. And again, if we compare the 2022 data, the current and capital expenditures are slightly higher for you than the state average, but then lower on the debt service side of things. And, you know, some things that can come into play, for example, you have a full-time fire department. So when you're comparing, it's not always completely 100% apples to apples. It's really just some information for you to kind of analyze where things lie. But that's one piece that does vary from one entity to the other. And then debt service slightly, or increased slightly there, but pretty consistent. Let's move right past that page. I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. That was what I had prepared to go through.
All right. First of all, thank you for the very thorough report, and I really appreciate that, and also the information that was given to us ahead of time. Is there anyone that has any questions? So I do want to again say thank you, because I know in years past we've asked for more information and you provided a lot more this time, and so that was really helpful, especially the comparisons with other cities across the state. And again, I encourage people, if they're really into statistics, look at the agenda packet that's posted online from like page 323 through 325. It goes through the 10-year history of Richfield employees, of the different jobs that we do, and all of the assets, like, you know, how many fire trucks there are and that type of thing. So it's pretty interesting data. So if anybody needs something to do on a rainy night, you can check out the Richfield audit. Any other questions? All right, thank you. So at this point, what we're going to do is we will come back to this item later to approve it.
Director Burmer wanted.
Oh, go ahead.
Mayor, can I add something? I just want to mention that this will be, as the finance director, this will be my last audit submission to the council and also my last budget submission. I would be leaving the city at the end of the year to spend more time with my family. I have enjoyed my last 2.5 years here at Richfield, and my colleagues have been wonderful. I feel the current finance team is stabilized and will continue to improve. And I wish the city and all my colleagues and my team the very best of everything. Thanks.
Thank you so much for all that you've brought to our city as well. I really appreciate that. City Manager Rodriguez.
Yes, Mayor. I had a thank you for after the budget, because Director Burma has two big things on the agenda tonight, and she actually is staying with the city until the end of the year, so happy about that. But I do want to thank you very much, because we had a lot of turnover. We had people that left and they had all the knowledge in their head, and so we didn't have a lot of documented processes. We are doing that now. We are upgrading our processes, and I'm very grateful for your time here and your leadership. And also, I do feel like the staff have stabilized and are going in the right direction. And so, thank you.
Thank you. When we get back to other business, we'll receive this whole financial report. Right now, we're going to go on to the consent agenda. And then do we need to change the screen out so people can see the speakers again? Are we working on it? Okay, so I don't know if people could hear that, but we're having some technical difficulties, and staff is in communication with the IT person. So we'll make sure that we talk loudly and continue on. Next, we move on to the consent calendar, so I'm going to turn that over to City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further council action on these items is necessary. However, any council member may request that an item may be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda. On tonight's consent calendar, item A, consider the approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending the Richfield City Code Appendix D fee schedule related to building, planning, and zoning fees, and schedule a public hearing and second hearing for September 24th, 2024. Item B, consider a resolution approving the 2024 revised and 2025 budget for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Item C, consider the approval of a resolution authorizing a grant agreement with the American Forest in the amount of $498,075 as part of the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program. Item D, consider approval of a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for their Artus Richfield High School Fast Pitch fundraising event scheduled to take place October 5th, 2024 at Fred Babcock, VFW number 5555, located at 6715 Lakeshore Drive. Item E, consider approval of an amendment number 1 to license number L344 between the City of Richfield and the Minnesota Department of Health for air monitoring equipment at the Richfield Water Treatment Plant. Item F, consider adoption of a resolution of support for Richfield's application for federal funding for a quarter planning study of 76th and 77th Streets via the U.S. Department of Transportation Reconnecting Communities Pilot RCP grant program. Item G, consider adoption of a resolution accepting a Hennepin County Youth Activities grant in the amount of $200,000 for Donaldson Park Playground improvements and the Pillsbury Plaza Playground. Item H, consider extending the American Rescue Plan Act Professional Services Agreement with the Conflict Resolution Center to November 15th, 2024. Item I, consider the approval of a resolution pertaining to filing of the pay equity report with the Minnesota Management and Budget. And I submit all these items for your consideration as part of the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? I did want to point out that there's quite a lot of information about this is the first reading for the ordinance for the city codes, and so we'll have that come before us as a second reading on September 24th. So this is just the first reading, which is why it's on consent calendar. But I also want to draw residents' attention to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund information. There's a lot of really good information there, and it is a very good program. And thank you to the American Forests and the USDA for the grant that we're receiving. That's very, very helpful. I know there's been a lot of concern about emerald ash borer and loss of trees and how to replace the urban canopy, and so that funding is very, very needed. With that, any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We have approved the consent calendar. Next, I will turn it over to Councilmember Whalen for the receipt of the City of Richfield Annual Financial Report for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. As required by state law, all general-purpose local governments must be audited in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards by a firm of licensed, certified public accountants. In addition, state law also requires that local governments publish within 6 months of the close of each fiscal year a complete set of financial statements presented in conformance with U.S. generally accepted accounting standards unless a formal extension is applied for and accepted. The city requested and was granted an extension this year to August 16th, 2024. Accordingly, the city's auditing firm, Bergen KDV, has completed the annual audit of the city's financial records and has issued an unmodified opinion on those records for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. The financial statements will be published locally and have already been submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Program. In addition, the annual report has been filed with the Office of the State Auditor pursuant to state law. Therefore, staff presents to the City Council the annual financial report for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. And I believe at this point, staff does not have anything additional to add. So then I would make a motion that we accept the annual financial report of the City of Richfield for the year ended December 31st, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions beyond what was asked earlier? All right. All in favor of accepting the annual financial report, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have accepted the annual financial report. Next, we will move on to a discussion regarding City Council attendance at the 2024 National League of Cities City Summit Conference. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a discussion regarding the City Council attendance at the National League of Cities Summit Conference. According to state statute 471.66, the governing body of cities and school districts must adopt a policy that controls out-of-state travel for elected officials. The policy was adopted by the City Council in November 2005 and stipulates that the City Council must approve in advance and by motion attendance at out-of-state conferences. And so we would, excuse me, I would move that we designate and approve City Council Member Christensen to attend the November 13th through 16th, 2024 National League of Cities Summit in Tampa, Florida.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I will say I'm looking forward to hearing the report of what you learn. I've heard good things about these conferences, so it would be wonderful to hear what you bring back for us. I do have a procedural question for that report. Is that at a work session or a council meeting, or how does that work?
Mayor and council members, that is not prescriptive in the policy. It actually is a pretty prescriptive policy, but it could be either. So if you have a preference, just let us know.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We have approved the attendance. Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to consider a request by Brixmor for a conditional use permit and amended planned unit development and final development plan for retail use of over 50,000 square feet of gross floor area at 140 66th Street West in order to re-tenant a building with a new grocer. And I'm going to turn that over to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Thank you.
The former Rainbow Foods building has been closed for 6 years. A new grocery store, Loma Bonita, would like to now occupy the 52,400 square foot building. Because the building has been vacant for more than a year, the conditional use permit has expired and nonconformities must be brought up to current code to the extent possible. Consequently, the property owner, Brixmor, is requesting a new conditional use permit and amended plan unit development and final development plan at this time. The proposed changes repair and enhance the look of the grocery store building, improve problematic on-site circulation patterns, decrease the parking, and increase the landscaping. The attached report dated August 12, 2024 itemizes the code requirements, Brixmor's response, and the staff's recommendations. Staff finds that, subject to the stipulations recommended in the report, the proposal meets the intent of both the comprehensive plan and the C2 zoning district. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 26th. Brixmor asked for concessions in regard to the staff recommendations for architectural relief along the blank wall area of the north building elevation. They plan to create some faux columns, but an awning that runs the length of the building is quote-unquote cost prohibitive. The commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the request as recommended by staff. Brixmor hopes to address the council regarding the same issue. Staff is open to a comparable trade-off. The council could recommend approval of the attached resolution with an amendment authorizing staff to approve a trade-off proposed by the applicant. And I know we will be hearing from the applicant shortly, but does community development staff have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. I did want to mention that we have continued those discussions about the relief on that north wall, and that I believe that Brixmor and staff have come to an agreement on the articulation of that wall and the design of that. And so I don't believe you need to make a specific action or a change to the resolution. I believe it is just covered under letter I of the proposed resolution that allows the Community Development Department to approve that. But I did want to mention that we have agreed that there is a solution that will enliven that wall and make it more attractive for everyone who's viewing it from that north side.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yes.
I had one other question for staff. At the Planning Commission, there was discussion about the EV charging unit, and it was explained what would happen if they're unable to find a contractor to do it. Can you go through that what was explained?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I cannot tell you the specifics of the Planning Commission meeting. I actually didn't attend. What I can tell you is that the code does allow for trade-offs. And so if the applicant is not able to find a purveyor who will install those chargers on the site for whatever reason, there may not be a market here, is what we're hearing. They would be able to propose something to staff that would offset that need. That is what a planned unit development does. It offers flexibility. And so we would be open to another proposal by Brixmor if they are not able to do that.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'm not sure what that noise is. If it's raining outside? All right. Well, hopefully, at the Planning Commission, it also rained really hard, and we got the feedback that you have to speak louder in the microphones because the people at home can't hear you when the rain's going on. So from here on out, if we can speak more loudly, that would be helpful. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And actually, just to clarify with staff, and we may be hearing more about this from Brixmor, are there still outstanding issues about the pedestrian or vehicle circulation that need to be resolved between staff and Brixmor?
Thank you. That's a great question. What you're approving tonight is a plan that includes a pedestrian connection from 66th Street, a fairly direct connection to the sidewalk in front of the grocery store. If the applicant is unable to secure the approvals needed from the adjacent property owner and provide us with documentation showing that, then we would continue to negotiate to find a different pedestrian route. So if they are unable to do this, then yes, we would continue those discussions.
Okay.
Procedurally, does that require an amendment, or is that covered under what we said earlier about the negotiations?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. There are provisions in the code that allow for minor amendments that can be approved by staff, and we would anticipate that this would be one. If the changes were large enough to exceed those thresholds, it would have to come back, but we wouldn't anticipate that.
And I will just make a comment, appreciating that it is useful for staff to have the ability to act nimbly and figure out some of these final details after. For the EV charging, I just encourage you to hold firm to our standard or really find something that addresses the concern that that's intended to address, which is reducing carbon emissions. What the materials I read suggested that because their preferred vendor wouldn't do it for free, they won't do it. And the intent of code is not that it happens for free for the applicant. The intent is that the EV charging stations get added. So I would just encourage staff to know that you have at least my full support, and I would guess much of the council's support to get those stations. And I believe the Brixmor applicant also wanted to speak, so please come forward to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Robinson, and I'm a project director with Brixmor Property Group. I just had a few remarks. Thank you, Melissa, for providing those remarks on our ongoing conversations. We have been working diligently with staff to come up with resolutions on the facade. And I think we've reached a great compromise on that. So again, I'm really excited to be here seeking this approval. As the application outlines, we do have a signed lease with Supermercado Loma Bonita to backfill the former Rainbow Foods. And just for background, Loma Bonita is an established family-owned Hispanic grocery chain with 4 locations in the Twin Cities, in Savage, St. Paul, Crystal, and Hilltop. The family's been targeting Richfield for a while as an ideal market for them to create a full-scale grocery store, unlike anything else in the market. And so I want to highlight a few things in our application. First off, the schedule has changed. somewhat from what was submitted. We were targeting store opening at the end of the year, but due to this process and the requirement to construct the various site improvements, which do require other approvals, it's difficult for us to provide a specific date, but we are anticipating to open 6 months after receiving the other approvals. Secondly, the budget has increased. Through our work with staff regarding ways in which the property no longer complies with code, we've committed to several new items which were not in the original application. Our application has a $3.7 million spend, but we're now projecting to spend closer to $4.2 million. And I want to emphasize that our scope reflects an entirely new experience for the customers. We are installing new islands at the entry off of 66th, which will create a more rational drive aisle pattern to access the grocer and the main center. The islands will feature landscaping, something we all know is lacking here. There will also be a landscaped pedestrian walk from the bus stop on 66 leading to the grocery entry, and it will have bike racks located for customer use. The facade will also be significantly upgraded to include painting of the metal canopy, a new canopy hung with metal cables, and new tower elements to signify the store entry. And then third, I wanted to touch on the EV item that was mentioned. We are going to use our best efforts to realize this requirement. We support and we've implemented EV charging at many of our centers across the country. But we contract with an electrical charging network provider who installs and operates that infrastructure. We do not install that infrastructure on our own. And so, as mentioned, we've reached out to a number of third-party providers to make determinations on whether installation is viable. We have had encouraging conversations with one group who's expressed interest, and so we're hopeful that that will pan out. But as mentioned, we will work to find an equitable solution if that does not happen. The last thing on my list is probably the most critical, and that is the issue of getting the adjacent owner, Popeye's, approval. Some of the new islands and the pedestrian path are on their property. We've contacted Popeye's, and they have been uncooperative in providing an approval. As an alternative, we do have a proposed plan that provides the same outcome, but removes any changes to their property. We are refining this plan and want to work with staff to resolve this via a minor amendment, as mentioned. Again, we are super excited about bringing this grocer to the community, and we hope to receive your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant before she steps down?
Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is a question for either the representative from Brixmor or our staff. I really appreciate the improvements to the parking and some of the flow issues, and we may or may not call a car getting bumped in the hub parking lot as getting hubbed. And so the opportunity to improve that, I think, is great for everybody. One of the transition points, I just didn't see it in the drawings and the renderings, is where the grocery store parking lot connects with the mall parking lot. And maybe it's there and I just didn't see it, but I wondered if somebody could maybe address some of the confusion where one parking lot bleeds into another, which I think is sometimes a place where confusion can arise.
We look at it as a holistic center, so we're not dividing the parking lots to be specifically for the grocer or for the main center. I think the islands, their main point of the islands to help direct traffic, because right now you just dump into parking stalls. And so if there is a great demand for parking stalls, people can park at the main center and walk over, or park behind the center along 65th and walk to the grocery store.
Okay.
And I just want to make one comment. First off, I do want to say, of course, while we're disappointed that this isn't a larger redevelopment proposal, I think we're all excited to see something in that building again. Certainly the lack of grocery in that space has been noted by many residents, and we're excited to see new investment in the center. I do want to say, although I'm happy with the improvements as they're coming, I was just a little bit honestly bothered by the comment that the budget was a surprise, because the building has been vacant for 6 years. we have a very consistent policy that you lose your non-conforming status after 1 year. I guess I just want to say it shouldn't be a surprise. And if our staff are ever unclear about what we require, I would want to know that, but I don't think that's the case. I think Brixmor just needs to be more proactive about this and be aware that we do expect the same thing out of you that we do out of any of our commercial property owners.
Okay.
So, thank you.
One thing, going back to Councilmember Troutman's point, I did notice when I was at the Planning Commission, there's going to be a four-way stop installed outside of Crossroads Panorama, so that may deal with some of what you're asking about.
Thank you. That absolutely would, because there's right now people can just naturally drive through the parking area. So if you have one or two cars and what people kind of treat as
Yes, yeah.
as a road, that's excellent.
I had did you have a question before? I had a similar thing. There was a gentleman at the Planning Commission that was with the SciTech school that's right there. And I was really pleased to see that they're going to put like a permanent curb and gutter there so that won't have people trying to race through by the park playground. So it should be a lot safer than just putting out orange cones out there. So I was really pleased to see that so that we can have everything work together. And I was hopeful that will help that safety issue as well. Councilmember Whalen.
Yeah, I appreciated that change as well. I was just curious if staff have any comments on the efforts to get cooperation from Popeyes, or I'm curious if we don't hear anything from them, just looking at the renderings and where the lot lines are, it seems pretty complicated to try and find a clear pedestrian route, and so I'm curious what the backup plan would be.
So we have not fully discussed this with staff yet, but one option would be obviously removing everything from their parcel, but shifting the pedestrian path to just beyond their parcel line so that it be on our parcel. So instead of cutting through their parcel, it would be on ours. So if you're looking at the plan, just shifting it plan east. The other island that prevents you from turning left when you enter off of 66th, that would be removed, but the existing median in the entry can be modified so that left turns aren't allowed.
Okay. I trust staff's judgment on what is.
And again, we have to work through it, but you asked specifics. So,
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Right, Councilmember Whalen. I'll just add that if they cannot get Popeye's approval, it's quite complicated. That is obviously the best place for a pedestrian connection from the bus stop, from the intersection. That's our best option. If it's not, it will be difficult, but we will work with them to find the best option that we can.
Thank you.
So to be clear on that, the efforts are going to continue to get cooperation from Popeye.
We're just at the initial, I just came up with the plan last week, so it has not been vetted with staff yet.
But getting back to, like, if we can document that you're trying to work with Popeyes and they're not
Yes, staff,
working,
yeah.
then
Yeah,
we'll
staff
move to
has
the
expressed that we need to have documentation of our conversations with Popeyes, and so we can provide that.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
before
it's
we
actually
voted.
2 entities with Popeyes, which also complicates it. It's corporate owns the actual ground, and the franchisee ground leases it, so it's 2 entities that require approval.
Thank you. And I'm going to echo what Councilmember Hayford O'Leary said. I really do appreciate that you're bringing a grocery option to this area because it is something that the community has asked for years. And so we're really appreciative of that you're working with staff and that we're trying to find a way to move this forward because I'm really looking forward to being able to shop at that grocery
Same.
store. So
Thank you. I hope you all vote for it. Ironic that it's also Hispanic Heritage Month, so got that.
All right. Thank you. I think you can step down. So I will make the motion to approve the proposed conditional use permit, plan unit development, and final development plan amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please. Oh, there is. I'm sorry. I didn't look over quick enough. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to say, since it is Spanish Heritage Month, I remember growing up here in Richfield and waiting for family members to arrive from Puerto Rico because there were no Goya products whatsoever. in Minneapolis and Richfield, I mean, it was really hard to get. And so what it means to have a restaurant like this is, or not a restaurant, but a grocery store, it is beautiful. And for folks that aren't familiar, I mean, it's great food, and I'm sure it's going to be a resource for all community members, not just Latino members. And I was wondering, Mayor, if it would be appropriate. It looks like the grocers are here. Would it be appropriate if they want? No. Oh, just the contractor. Nope. Well, fantastic. So that was it.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed conditional use permit, planned unit development, and final development plan amendment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion has passed. Moving on, we will be going to consider the 2024 revised and 2025 proposed budget resolutions, adopting the 2025 preliminary property tax levy, setting truth and taxation hearing date, authorizing budget revisions, authorizing revisions of the 2024 department budgets, and setting city fees for 2025. Before Councilmember Christensen presents that information, I have a question for the city attorney. Can that be made as one big motion, or are we going to have to deal with them separately?
Mayor Supple, I would recommend that you take each resolution separately, so 4 separate resolutions, 4 motions, please. Thank you.
Okay, so when we get to that, we'll do them each separately. Thank you. All right, then I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor. On August 20th, 2024, a special city council meeting was held for the purpose of presenting and discussing the 2024 revised 2025 proposed budget and 2025 preliminary property tax levy. At this meeting, staff presented to the City Council a preliminary gross tax levy of $29,882,318, including a levy for general fund operations of $23,628,800, a debt service levy of $4,101,375, and equipment and technology levy of $1,528,800, and an economic development agency levy of $623,343. The proposed levy increase presented at the August 20th, 2024 work session was 5.36%. Since that time, the Public Works budget has been revised and has increased by $50,000. The increase will fund contractual services for street maintenance. This has been funded by decreasing the reserve contingency. Additionally, the public safety budget has been revised and has increased by $25,000. The increase will fund 1 additional community service officer position. The new position is $75,000, but there were other savings found. This is being funded partially from reserve contingencies and partially from additional levy. With these stated changes, staff is now presenting to the City Council a preliminary tax levy of $29,907,569. This includes a levy for general fund operations of $23,654,051, a debt service levy of $4,101,375, and equipment and technology levy of $1,528,800, and an economic development agency levy of $623,343. The proposed levy is an increase of 5.45% over the 2024 levy. Accordingly, the 2025 preliminary gross levy represents a 5.45% increase from the 2024 gross levy. Once the preliminary levy is approved, it may be further reduced at a later City Council meeting, but it legally cannot be increased over the preliminary approved amount. In addition, the city must certify its proposed property tax levy for payable year 2025 to the county auditor and set a date for its truth in taxation public meeting on or before September 30, 2024. The truth in taxation public meeting must be held between November 25 and December 30th, 2024, and must occur at 6 p.m. or later. The city's Truth in Taxation public meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 26, 2024, at 6:30 p.m. At the August 2024 special city council meeting, staff also presented the proposed city fees for 2025. The staff is asking council to adopt a resolution setting city fees for 2025. A separate transitory ordinance related to building permits, zoning, and other land use permits fees established by Appendix D of the city's code are included in a separate report as they are set by ordinance, not resolution. The recommended action is by motion to adopt the attached resolutions establishing the 2025 preliminary property tax levy and proposed date for the Truth in Taxation hearing, authorizing budget revisions, authorizing revision of the 2024 department budgets, and the city fees for 2025. Is there a motion?
So we're supposed to take each of these separately. So the first one, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution adopting a proposed budget and tax levy for the year 2025 and setting the Truth in Taxation date and time for that hearing. That's all in the same one. All right, is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion?
I know we've had a few budget conversations already. I'm wondering if staff could highlight some of the factors that lead to the budget proposal as is, both some of the external factors, and then I think particularly highlighting some of the new positions and major changes on that front would be helpful.
Thank you, Council Member. And I'll turn it over to Director Verma. I just wanted to say, again, thank you. Thank you to Director Verma. Also to our directors and their teams. I'm learning more and more that we in Richfield have very much a team approach to the budget. It starts in May. It's a long process. We have long work sessions with you as well. This year's budget it's focused on a couple key priorities. One is dealing with the very tight labor market, and so you'll see that reflected in the increased numbers. The second thing is getting the staffing that we need to keep on track with some of the goals that the council's laid out in the strategic plan. And so we have recommended, it's actually 7.5 positions. We had very few the last budget, but we do feel that we need those positions. Not all of those are supported by the levy. Some of them are supported by like utility revenues, or there's SCORE funding, for example, to help with the recycling position. Also, I did want to point out that tonight's resolution, you're actually not passing the budget. That comes in December. What you're doing tonight is you're appropriating by department level in the general fund to pass that preliminary levy, which needs to be filed with the county by September 30th. So I just did want to clarify that. And also, I wanted to just briefly address some of the community feedback that we've gotten on the budget. We agree that exploring alternative programs in public safety is really important. That's why we've been working on it since I've been here. So for the last 5 years, we've been adding positions and funding these alternative programs, these innovative programs. We currently, and I have a long response that I've sent to the people that have emailed us, but I'll summarize it here. We currently have 3 programs in place. We're proposing to add more programs, 2 more programs actually. One is an expansion of what CSOs are doing for us. And then we're interested in an additional program, but we won't be able to do that without additional staffing. Again, we've hired 4 positions to support these programs in the last 5 years. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's also important to note that you can't totally untangle, the traditional policing from these alternative programs, because there's been a lot of things that we've done differently with our officers that take more of their time. There's more training that we've done. The upgrade in dispatch takes more time on the traffic stops, for example. De-escalation takes longer. So we are asking more of our officers in terms of time. So this might be not a dollars that you're going to see in the budget, but it is a factor that we have to take into account for operational purposes. As you know, we've been short-staffed. That is common to all cities right now. It's just an extremely tight labor market. And I believe the first thing that we need to do is to do everything that we can to fill those current positions, and really encouraged by this grant program. And we did just find out that we did get we don't know if we got 1 or 2 positions for that grant program, but we did get at least 1 position. So excited about that. We can also participate in that grant program by funding it. So we wouldn't get the grant money, but they would be able to do that accelerated program to become police officers. Also there's this suggestion that we shift that funding that would be for the 2 additional police officers over to an alternative program. And right now, the alternative response program, it's brand new. And I did ask the chiefs to look at how many calls they were going on. And we do expect this to ramp up. But right now, it's like 1 call per shift. And that compares to like our sworn officers who respond to 10 to 20 calls. So it's just premature to expand that right now. And at the same time, we're having our officers, again, part of this is due to staff shortages, but we're having our officers respond to calls just without backup. We also have stacking of 911 calls, and that means that they're having to triage those 911 calls. And I believe that by filling the current vacancies and adding these 2 additional positions, it will be absolutely critical not only to public safety, but also to the safety of our officers. And so that's why I'm recommending it so strongly. And I know we've discussed it in previous work sessions. I was really grateful for the feedback and the suggestion to also add the additional CSO, and to look at what duties that they were doing and how could they help relieve some of the other duties that the officers are doing. They can't relieve all of it. It's limited what they can help with, but one thing that they can help with is through support services is to help with that environmental health and that code compliance, which is something that we just heard about in the community survey, that people are noticing that the condition of the city, they rated us less well on that. The other thing is we're seeing an increase in hoarding across the city. That is a mental health condition. And so those CSOs can connect to the embedded social worker and have follow-up and connect those folks to services. So I don't know if the chiefs have additional questions, but we're all available to answer questions. We also have our social worker that's working on the art team here, Cassie, so she's available for questions as well.
Are there other additional questions or comments? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you for the summary. I know it. I don't think there will be much discussion since there's been agreement on these fronts in the previous meetings, but do want to highlight some of the positions I'm really excited about, particularly the additional person working within sustainability, specifically on the solid waste and recycling efforts, that frees up our sustainability coordinator to have more time to focus on our city's climate action plan that we have put somewhat on hold or delayed because of capacity reasons. So I'm very excited about that. There's several other positions that are maybe not quite as clear of a direct community impact, but certainly have been hearing from a variety of departments the need for greater staff capacity. So want to lift that up, and for residents who haven't heard this before, a strong majority of the budget is to invest in our staff who provide our programs and services for our community, so that when we talk about levy increases, that is most of what that's supporting, is our people who are supporting all of you, the residents. I will say what I think will be a bigger part of the discussion, or has been at the last two. I continue to, I don't disagree with everything that's been said. I continue to have some reservations about when we are making the biggest reinvestment, additional investment in public safety that we've made in, at least in my time on council, for roughly 93% of that to go to our very needed, very important traditional officers, traditional approach, and only 7% of that going with the CSO position. I'm happy about that addition, but I would like to see us explore more about how it can be a greater balance between the traditional approach and more of the alternative models. I talked with some of the people who reached out. I don't know all of them, and so somewhere there's been community discussions that started beyond people that I reached out to, but I pretty consistently, I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear from people who said, yes, the right answer is the 2 officers, that's what we should be doing, but that was consistently around 20 to 30% of the 20-some people that I talked with, that there's a very strong community interest in our alternative models. And I know that the cities, City of Brooklyn Center, City of Minneapolis, who have introduced the behavioral crisis response team in Minneapolis, something very similar to our model in Brooklyn Center, within a year or year and a half, they wanted to expand it. And the end of this budget year that we're discussing, it would be a year and a half from when it started. Yes, right now we're only 3 months in, if that. Yeah, so all that said, I see many of our officers are here. I am very supportive of, appreciate the staff who are part of, and any union members who are part of negotiations, all the work that went into the comp and class work, that we are investing almost $750,000 in paying you what you deserve, making sure that our wages are competitive with other cities. We know that your jobs are getting more complicated and want to pay you for that. I also was very excited for Chief Henthorn, the update you shared, and now with the update about our grant proposal, that puts us on a real path to hire at least 4, if not all 5, of the open positions right now. That to me, I agree, that seems like the strongest potential sort of immediate intervention to some of the overtime crunches and stretches that our department's been facing. So I recognize that this is not, it's not the council's role to dictate exactly what positions get hired, and I'm just one person, so I guess my main question would be to the rest of council. I would like to see, between now and the final budget proposal in December, to see a proposal of what would it look like to spend more of that total allotment, that total increase, on some version of the alternatives. I don't know if that is best used in the alternative response team or CSOs or crime prevention or various other options. But I guess I would ask my colleagues if that is of interest to more of the council, or if that's not, if there's not a majority that's interested in that, then we can move forward with the proposal as is.
So I'd be happy to answer that question, but I have one question. It's before I go ahead with that. It's my understanding that once we do this preliminary, we can only move downward. We can't increase anything. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
So if we add something in December, we have to take something else away.
That is correct. Here.
Okay, thank you. So I'll comment and answer your question. I received a lot of input from a lot of residents, and the message that I sent out to them is that I don't think this is an either-or conversation. I think it's a both-and conversation, because it is very important to support our officers that are out there on the street. It's also important to be looking at alternative response programs. And what I shared with a number of the residents that contacted me is that you can't just look at Richfield's budget to figure this out, because we have been doing a lot of really good intragovernmental cooperation and collaboration. So for instance, we are part of Bloomington Public Health. Bloomington Public Health serves Richfield, Edina, and Bloomington. And when the state did the the opioid settlement, we received a significant portion of money that's going to be spread out over several years. So we're just got that money, so we're in the beginning stages of that, but I was really grateful to find out that our public safety department is going to be working with Bloomington Public Health for how we can provide support for people that are dealing with addiction issues and help get them mental health resources. But if you just look at our budget, you don't see the Bloomington Public Health, because that's a separate entity. Another thing that I think is important, I'm really looking forward to the alternative response program moving forward. But since we just started in June, and that's also in cooperation with Edina, we need to figure out with Edina working together how we can expand that, and I'm guessing it will be expanded. Brooklyn Park did see a lot of use for it, and I'm guessing optimistically that we will probably be able to do something similar here. I think right now, though, it's premature to put money in there before we've had a chance to talk to Edina about it and to see how the program's going. So I'm hoping this time next year, we're going to be having a recommendation to put more money into that, because I think that, to me, makes sense. There are also support from Hennepin County. They've put the COPE program in place. For those of you that aren't aware of that, that's 24/7. You can call and get assistance if someone's having a mental health crisis. And so we're getting a lot of support from them. And we've got our embedded social worker project program here that we've supported. And even as Hennepin County has funded less of it, we've put the, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've emphasized that we want to make sure we budget for that. So there's a lot of really good programs, and I support those programs. But I also want to say that in the short term, it's really important that we support and make sure we have well-trained, well-rested officers. So I'm supporting adding those 2 positions, because we need to add those 2 positions to make sure we have the staffing that we need. I was talking to a friend of mine trying to think through all this, and she suggested I look at the OSHA website. And so I pulled up some OSHA things, and it talks about what happens when you work irregular and extended shifts. And that would be like if you're having to do a double shift because somebody had to call in sick. And we've had people tell us that they don't want to call in sick when they really should, because they don't want their colleagues, staff to work double shifts. So if you have people that are tired, working extra shifts, putting in overtime, it fits under this area. And according to this website from OSHA, that irregular and extended shifts are common among healthcare providers, transportation workers, first responders, firefighters, police officers, military personnel, construction workers, oil field workers, service and hospitality workers, and many others. So the groups of people we're talking about here are included in that list that can be affected by that. And the study found that worker fatigue increases the risk for illness and injuries. Accidents and injury rates are 18% greater during evening shifts and 30% greater during night shifts when compared to day shifts. Research indicates that working 12 hours per day is associated with a 37% increase of risk or injury. So to me, it's very clear that we need to make sure we invest in the appropriate staffing so people can be well rested, get the time off they need, get the training they need, and not be trying to work double shifts and covering because we don't have enough people to cover it. And I think that'll provide the best outcomes for the public that we serve as well as for our officers and staff. So I am in support of adding the 2 positions, and that would be my opinion. So thank you for asking. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on that? Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I think my primary concern, and I think it's clear that the whole council has no doubt in the value of obviously the union negotiated raises and in general paying what's appropriate. I am still concerned about the 2 additional positions, and it's still, although to some extent my concerns have been allayed, the fact that we still have unfilled positions, we are approving and we're committing to adding these 2 officers that we may not be able to fill those positions in the time that we're approving this budget for. It has also become even more clear over the last week as I've received feedback from both sides, and I received significant amount of interest in this. It's a very emotional and important conversation for people about whether or not to add police officers. It would be politically impossible to remove these positions later. That is abundantly clear. So when we say we'll also invest in alternatives later, we want to be clear that we're going to continue to disproportionately increase the budget of public safety at the expense of other departments. And I think that's important because it's not that public safety isn't doing an excellent job. It's not that they don't need more resources. It's that we do have the rest of the city to worry about, and I do worry about the fact that we're continuing to increase public safety at a higher rate than other departments. And I do worry that the solution, Mayor Supple, although I'm glad to hear that you want to invest in both traditional and alternatives, would further increase that disparity between other departments. I appreciate, the city manager's response that it is not appropriate or helpful to just increase more money to the alternative response team when it's just getting off the ground. But I guess, share Councilmember Whalen's desire to hear how that would be better spent if it were not in those 2 officer positions and not in the alternative response team. That said, for the purposes of tonight, it seems that we do have consensus that the total amount that is proposed as an increase is appropriate. So I think I support the question before us of whether the levy is appropriate. I would like to hear alternative ideas from staff brought to us. That would be an alternative to adding the 2 positions. And just to clarify, I completely support the CSO and I appreciate adding that.
All right. Other comments or questions? Councilmember Christensen, are you reaching for the microphone?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I do appreciate the comments from other council people about looking for alternatives. However, I agree with Mayor Supple. We are well needed for these officers. From personal experience over the years with my family, different family members being very trivial things coming out to very serious things coming out. You can't say much more appropriate kudos to these people, those men and women that put their life on the line every single day. You don't know when you wake up in the morning how many calls you're going to get. You don't know what type of calls you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to come home that night. We just don't know. And for us to say that sure, having alternatives are great. That's perfectly fine, and that would help in a lot of cases. We do need well-rested, mentally fit, physically fit, uniformed officers out on the street that these people, the residents in our community, have come to rely on. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. And I really appreciate the process that we've gone through over the last couple of months or maybe number of weeks. And one of the concerns that Councilmember Hayford O'Leary raised that I thought was valid and I think has been addressed is that we have not filled the force completely, and that if you need 5 people, advertising for 7 doesn't doesn't add any people and doesn't add any. So I really appreciate that in the last few weeks. One of the fruits of this process is finding and making sure that we're going to be able to add more officers through the ICPOET program and fund that further and also achieve some cost savings there. And I think the cost savings are honestly, I just want to say this directly to everybody, more not secondary to actually getting the team members that you need to do the work that you have to do. And having been here for a number of generations, I appreciate that in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up here, there was more crime and less people. So I think there are a couple of conclusions. One, that there's improvement on your side. Also, when I think of Jamie and myself, our cohort committed more crimes than our kids are committing. And so we have to give our kids as a cohort some credit too for being a safer community to live in. And so I'm grateful to see everybody here, and I actually have a number of questions that maybe aren't appropriate because it's not a work session. But I'm glad to see everybody here. I'm glad that we're investing in alternative programs. And part of my advocacy here is wanting to say that in addition to recognizing that calls take longer, and another thing I was just going to mention that I thought was really persuasive is that you shared that not everybody wants to work the amount of overtime that maybe people did a generation ago, and I've certainly found that where I work, and so I recognize that, and I think that's probably true in every industry. But I didn't want, and I don't want to let this opportunity pass where we're not looking at investing not just in officers. And our mayor talked about both but not just both and, but really adding capacity. I have a lot of questions about, if our social worker is only going on one call. I'm not presuming that that's the only thing that our social worker is engaged in, but that creates, there's certainly a huge cleavage between the mental health problems that we have in our community and how we're able to respond. And one of the things I really hope for public safety, which is our officers, but it's also we have our public health team here and we have social workers here that with alternative staff, we can be on offense in a way that we can't, where our officers, I know all of you, if not all of you, most of you are out in our community, not just responding to crimes, but present in our community, but giving you more tools. I hope you continue to ask and reach out to get more tools, including social workers, including community resource officers. And I would echo what Councilmember Whalen said, that if for some reason between now and December, and we talked about this too, Chief, that if it doesn't look like we're able to fill these positions, I recognize that alternative team members maybe can't do everything that police officers can do, but I'm really concerned that we wouldn't be able to hire officers. So we're expanding the budget. We don't have the officers that we need. And so I would be interested in reallocating those in the coming months if we found out that we can't actually hire the officers that we need to in the 2025 budget.
So in follow-up to that, where are we in the hiring process? If I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Chief Hendlorn to give you an update because we have a very positive update on that.
Thank you.
Got to press the button first. Madam Mayor, Council, those are all good points that you brought up from the dais and listening to some of the things that people wrote in. We've always been a progressive department dating back to the early 90s when we were one of the only cities that had a social worker. We had her for about 10 years until budget cuts obviously caused us to make some tough decisions and let that program go. But if you look at the positions that we have currently now, and we have 5 to get back to full staffing, 3 are filled. And our great staff out here in the audience is doing a great job recruiting because we have additional applicants in the process that we're looking at. So I believe that we'll have those 5 positions filled. hopefully sometime this year, early 2025, and the fact that we got the ICPOIC grant again for early 2025 would give us then that additional cover to hire those 5 positions and put us back at full strength. When we look at alternative models and what we're doing, we're looking at that pilot program through Hennepin County for the unseen victims. That's going to require a lot of time on scene by our officers. And I don't know all the details. I'm meeting with Hennepin County here in the fall, and we're going to determine what training needs to be done, what we actually have to do. I'm concerned about it. I like looking at alternatives, but if an officer has to stay on scene longer now or longer then to fill out forms and do interviews and things like that, I'm concerned about that. I want to do the program. I like pilot programs. We're sort of looked at as sort of the test market for the county, but at the same time, I have to have that additional staffing to be able to do some of these programs. That's the same with the Bloomington Public Health model of using opioid money to be able to have therapists respond out and deal with people that are in crisis due to their addiction and mental health issues with narcotics. We don't know yet if we have to send somebody out with those therapists. But again, that's going to be a situation that's going to be more demanding on our staff when we look at these alternative models. So those are unknowns at this point that we don't know, but those are some of the things that I'm planning and hopefully that we can implement within the city of Richfield, along with being able to look at our CSO program. And I've met with Jennifer Anderson, our support services manager, to look at how we can expand the CSO duties and what we need to do to sort of take some of the burden off our officers. That's something we've never done before. Our CSOs do just support services. We're looking at doing, unsheltered education, transports. We've never done transports in the history I've been here. Those are all things that will help the officers deal with their daily duties. So, but all that also depends upon, having staff, sworn staff, to support some of the issues that we want to do, and that's important. Otherwise, we're going to have people responding out on calls that they don't know necessarily what is going to happen, and that's when the risk is going to be extremely high. So. Go ahead.
I know Councilmember Troutman had a question, but I think we'll go ahead to our social worker first. And if you could push the button, it should turn green, and then tell us your name. And
Perfect. So just to kind of.
I just had a question before we moved on, and I really want to hear from you. I just wanted to understand, when you said staff, you meant uniformed officer staff, or also specifically not just all of your staff, but just I just wanted to make sure I understood when you were talking about you need staff to support those alternative programs. You were talking about police or all staff, or?
I'm sorry, I specifically mean sworn staff.
That's what
Yes.
I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
thank you. And then if you could introduce yourself and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Cassie. I'm the alternatives response social worker that we've been talking a lot about tonight. And I would just like to bring to your attention that even though we may not necessarily always need a full handful of officers at a call, maybe calls will go from like 3 officer minimum to a 1 officer, but we're still taking away from their ability to go out in the community and continue to serve. So however long we're on scene, until we get comfortable and ascertain whether this is a safe situation for us to clear everybody, we're still taking away from public safety's ability to respond to other calls. There have been a couple of calls, one specifically in Richfield that I can think of, that if I did not have an officer, we would have been in trouble. There was a lady with an 8-inch butcher knife behind the door, and had I answered that door, we don't know what could have happened. I'm not armed. I'm not trained in self-defense. These are things that these guys show up and they're able to do. The idea of not having additional staff to support ongoing operations within the city of Richfield and kind of just investing in this team is very, very well intended, and I think is very needed. This is a great team. We do work really well. We do great work. These guys are great. I think it is really early in the process to look at adding another team. That's my perspective from both working here as an embedded social worker in your department prior to starting this role, and then also as working as your alternative responder. I just wanted to provide that feedback because I don't get to talk to you guys during your work sessions, and figured this was a good opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chief Dobish, were you coming up to speak? Oh, okay. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I just wanted to clarify one of Chief Tanthor's comments. When you said 3 of the 5 positions are filled, does that mean like you have an employment contract but they haven't begun work yet? Or is this more of like they will go through the ICPOA program and in a year you will have an officer in that position?
We have Dom, he's not here. Is he here? No. So he's out on the street now, so that's one. We have Serena Williams, who's going to start shortly. And then we have, I can't remember her last name. Megan who? Miller, excuse me, thank you. Megan Miller, who is also going to start. She'll go through the intensive ICPOA program, but she'll be ready to go here probably by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Can you, for the people that are listening online, explain the ICPOA program that haven't been through all the work sessions with us?
ICPOA stands for Intensive Police Officer Training Program. It's somebody that we can hire that already has a degree, whether a 2-year or 4-year degree. We receive state funding to put them through a 3-month skills program, and they get paid while they go through that program. And they usually finish the program within 2.5 to 3 months.
Councilmember Whalen.
I guess since it seems like the most important question is what the council is directing of staff, I wanted to clarify with Councilmember Troutman, if you could, it seems we have 2 clear voices interested in the proposal as presented, and 2 voices, and Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, correct me if I'm mis-summarizing, but 2 voices interested in staff coming back maybe before even the December meeting, but between now and the December meeting with a proposal of what would it look like to invest that money in alternative options, since we have not seen that kind of proposal yet. And I guess I'm curious, Simon, if you are, it sounded like maybe you are saying that if we get to December and it's not looking like we can hire those positions, you would be, can you clarify?
Yes. Yes, so thank you for the clarification. And I support the ask for new officers. I don't support the ask for posting new officers that we're not confident that we're able to hire. I support giving you the tools that you need, and I think, and I support aggressively encouraging you to explore alternative means, and not to let budgets be a constraint to hiring more community resource officers, more social workers, and like you said, doing things you've never done with staff in ways that, when I say staff, I mean all your staff, not just police, but that can maybe, like our social worker pointed out, instead of having 3 officers, you have 1 officer. Instead of 40 minutes or an hour on a call, it's 15 minutes on a call. And so anything I can do to encourage you and our public safety department as a whole to move in that direction, I want to do that. I'm comfortable. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable. I'm supportive of the two officer positions if we're going to get 2 officers. I'm not supportive of 2 officer positions if we don't think we're going to get those to hire those in 2025. And that includes the 5 that are open that we're trusting will be included. So that I know that's maybe slightly different than where Councilmember Whalen and Councilmember Hayford O'Leary are at. But hopefully, thank you for clarifying.
Can I ask one other clarification question?
Yeah.
So procedurally, if we approve this funding and we approve those positions, and then we find out in February that we're having trouble hiring them, at that point, does the city manager have the option of following through on what you said and redirecting the funds at some point down the road. Can you explain how that procedure would work?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, according to the charter, the city manager actually have authority to change things within budgets, so the department budget. So within the department budget, I can shift things around according to the line items depending on operational needs, including hiring and firing. And I have to come back to the council if I'm going to move or propose to move things from one budget to another above the appropriations that you approve with the budget.
So you would be able to follow Councilmember Troutman's direction of, you know, trying to hire and working really hard to get those two positions filled?
That is correct.
I'm still unclear what your direction is, Councilmember Troutman. So like, are you saying that if the two remaining outstanding positions that are already funded were not filled by December, then you would like something like Councilmember Whalen is asking, or would you say you would not?
No, and this is, thank you, Councilmember O'Leary. This follows up the last work session that we had where you were unclear, Chief, forgive me if I'm wrong, how confident you were that we could use the ICPOIT program as a pipeline for additional officers, and whether you had, you said you were pretty sure, but you weren't 100% sure, and you weren't sure you're going to be 100% before this meeting. And so, and maybe you have that clarity now, but what I'm trying to be clear about, and forgive me if it's not clear, if between now and the end of the budget, or also in February, but you get clarity and you are less confident than you are right now that you're going to be able to make the hires that you want. The purpose of hiring new officers, the purpose of posting new positions is to hire them. And hopefully by December you have a good sense of whether or not you think we're going to be able to hire 7 officers in the next 12 months. If we're not, I would like you to reconsider allocating resources within your budget to other team members. Also, and it's no longer my call, I hope you continue to consider adding other team members.
So I can just, obviously the last work session, we didn't know that we got another ICPOIT grant. So with the 3 officers I mentioned, we have the ability, after talking with Hennepin County and Minskew, that they're going to open a class in November for us to pay and fill 2 positions to send people through the pseudo ICPOIT program.
Yep.
So that would be 5.
Okay.
That would get us back to our sworn strength of 46.
Okay. Then you're going to post the 2. I'm sorry, excuse me.
No, that's okay. The new ICPOIT grant that we just received is for early 2025.
Okay.
So we have to take or sign off on that sometime in October. That would be for 2025, and then we would probably hire that last position in early 2025.
Then, I'm supportive of that. I support adding additional officers if you're confident you can add additional officers, and I would fund more. I wanted 2 additional non-officers, and we got 1. And hopefully, public safety is our CROs, or hopefully public safety. You hear that our goal was to get you more resources, not starve you of resources. And if you don't want to do excessive overtime, I'm very sympathetic to that, and I want to facilitate that.
All right, any further comments? Councilmember Whalen.
Clearly, my proposal only has 2, so I'm acknowledging that there's the majority of council. I just want to also acknowledge that it's a pretty, it fluctuates a lot. I certainly hope that all of our officers, especially with the raises that are coming, that are part of this budget, I hope no one leaves. And that we continue to have a fully staffed department, whether that is the 46 or 48. But I guess my feedback to Councilmember Troutman that I don't think impacts tonight's vote, but I guess I would agree with Councilmember Hayford O'Leary's confusion that it feels less clear if there's a point when you would change your mind, and you don't need to, but if you are, I guess maybe I am asking, do you currently have enough information that you are saying a full-throated yes, or if there is something that could change before December, what would that be? I still don't feel very clear about that.
I think now I have the information to say yes. My biggest concern was that if posting for jobs is not actually the support of getting the team members on the team to do the work that needs to be done, and so I have more confidence. Every time we've talked, I've had more confidence that we're not virtue signaling that it's hard and you should have more team members, but you're saying we need more team members and you'll have them. And I also don't want to signal or feint towards alternative responses are like a good thing that we want to talk about, but we want those resourced, and I'm willing to make that investment. I'm willing to say yes, and so very clearly, yes. I'm supporting the two officers because I'm now confident that we're not talking about them. We're going to engage them, and I'd like to see more investments, not less, in alternative team members. And I appreciate that you're looking that way. And if I were here next year, I would be advocating for the same thing.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I do just want to make, and I appreciate the clarity, Councilmember Troutman, and it's sort of clear that that's where the consensus is landing. I do want to be clear, though, and just to ask the city manager, at any point, having the vacancies you had, did you consider removing an officer position and allocating it to something else?
I did not. I feel very strongly, which is why this has been these have been tough work sessions and a tough meeting tonight, that by having less sworn officers, we compromise not only the safety of our residents, but also the safety of our officers. And that is one reason why I think we need these two additional positions. I also, we have been able to help stabilize staffing levels by going up above sworn levels temporarily. And we've done that, and it's not just sworn, we've done it in other departments too, like finance. We did it in the fire department. And I would continue to do that to make sure that we're trying to stabilize those levels, because there have been more staff turnover. The other thing that I just want to stress with you all is the urgency of applying to this ICPOET program. Like, we have been, not me, Chief and his team have been very innovative in asking if we can pay the $50,000 as opposed to getting a grant for it, and to get candidates through that program. I am worried that once other cities find out about this, that they're also going to do it. So I think there is urgency in making sure we're in that first program where they allow the cities to pay for it, because I think it will get more competitive. It is there. If you go look at the LMC website, I haven't counted recently, but there are like 7 pages of openings for cities for officers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yeah, my intent in asking that was certainly not to suggest that you should have done that, because I certainly agree we do not need a smaller force. It was just to say, with one of the comments you made, Councilmember Troutman, I think it is unrealistic that if the positions are not filled in February or July or August, that they're going to not have those positions anymore. I am expecting, by us giving the direction that we're giving tonight, that they are going to continue trying until they get those positions. And I mentioned that, not to criticize you, but just to kind of like eyes wide open, that's what's going to happen. Like, they're going to get those positions. They're not going to give them up. And I think that there's clearly a demonstrated need for it. It's money well spent. I still continue to worry about the opportunity cost relative to the rest of the city, and the disproportionate amount of money that's going into public safety. It will still be well spent, and I think I'm fine with that. But I do want us to be clear that if there's more money to go into alternative response, it will be added on to the $1 million that we're adding this year.
Thank you. And just in response to that, my concern arose in our first, not our first, but the first of the last several work sessions where the question was asked, do we think we can get to full staffing in 2025? And the response was, yeah, no, probably not. and now I think this is maybe the fruit of the conversation. I think we're in a better place. We're funding both what you've asked for and maybe what you didn't ask for, but hopefully is helpful. And thank you. And the thank you will continue probably on into the next agenda item.
And I do appreciate that we had that conversation, because then the creative solution came about, and we need to have those kinds of creative solutions. Because I think it's really important that we're out there and we're finding quality officers to fill our ranks. So, Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just say, clearly, this is the direction we're going. I don't, to be clear, I don't think this is bad. I think this will be good. I think you all will appreciate the extra help, and that it sounds like we have promising routes to hire more officers. I won't be weighing in on a future budget, but for what it's worth, I do not share the overall concern about to me, what feels like a scarcity mindset of if we do this now, we can't invest more in alternative models later. And just will highlight for the three of you that will still be on council, one of our 2 social workers is not yet in our general fund budget. They're still funded with ARPA funds. That will be up next year. And so if we want to maintain the levels there, that will be an investment next year. And again, that at least the 2 other cities in Hennepin County that I know have a model like this, or a model for alternative response, behavioral crisis response, whatever they call it, that it was around 1.5 years in that they wanted to expand to be more available. And in Minneapolis, that is 24/7. And I think is, obviously there's very different levels of need and a gigantic population difference. But all that to say that I hope we continue with the investments in the alternatives, and that that's going to come back in future years. And 3 of the people that I talked with are the 3 primary candidates for this seat and Councilmember Troutman's seat. And I think they were not all uniform. We heard one's comments, but I certainly expressed an interest in continuing that direction. And so I hope that conversation continues.
Thank you. So my parents always said you should learn something new every day. And so the thing that I learned was when Chief Henthorn talked about the fact that if you're going to be successful in implementing the alternative models, you have to have the support from the sworn officers. So in some respects, I do think adding those 2 sworn officers is helping us to be more successful in implementing the alternative models. And I would support in future years investing more in those alternative models. But we do need to make sure that we keep that base there that can support them, because we don't want to have a program that's there and not support it. And so that was the new light bulb that went off for me when you said that we need to have those sworn officers there in order to support the alternative models. So I appreciate that. Thank you for everybody that was part of the conversation. Thank you for everybody that stuck around for all of this tonight, and all of the people that emailed us and called us and did various things that way. So at this point, our acting city attorney has told us that we need to do these as separate motions. So can you remind me, do we have the motion on the floor, or do we need to remake the motion? Okay, and that would be to adopt the proposed budget and tax levy for the year, or the resolution for the proposed budget and tax levy for the year, as well as setting the truth and taxation hearing date. All right, is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've passed that one. Now moving on to the second one that Councilmember Christensen was reading about earlier. This would be, I would entertain a motion to, entertain a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the budget revisions.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we've adopted that one. Next, we need a motion that would, make sure I get the right word here, approve or adopt the resolution that is authorizing revision of the 2024 budget of various departments.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have approved that. And our fourth and final resolution, so this would be approving the resolution to establish the 2024 license, permit, and miscellaneous fees pursuant to the provision of Appendix D of the Ordinance Code of the City of Richfield and rescinding Resolution Number 12127.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And I actually did have one thing I wanted to talk about on this one. If you go to page 410 in the agenda packet.
Mayor,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, there is a mistake in that resolution, and it says the 2024 license permit and miscellaneous fees. It's actually for the 2025.
Oh, so
License fees.
the maker of the motion and the seconder, would you say that for 2025? Are you okay with that?
Yes, I would move with the correction that it's for 2025.
Okay, so for 2025. So on page 410, and now my screen has gone weird here. Hold on a second. It has the section that has to do with the cannabis fees. And I'm trying to figure out how to make this bigger. At any rate, it talks about that we haven't gotten official guidance from the OCM. And so I had asked staff about that because it says to be determined. And we're still waiting on official guidance from the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management. So I just want people to be very clear that this is what we think is going to happen, but we're still waiting from the state of Minnesota. So the opinion was that in year 0, the business would pay for the registration and the renewal fee. And then in year 1, they probably would have no fee. And then in year 2, they would have to pay the renewal fee. So that's our best knowledge at this point of what the intent is. But I just wanted to put that, since it says to be determined and we're waiting for the OCM, I wanted to make sure we were clear on that. Are there any other questions or comments? And I don't know if the staff wanted to give us any
Nothing more to
information.
add, Mayor.
No. What was that? Okay, so the motion before us is to approve the, the setting of the city fees for 2025. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we've set the fees. All right, so next we're going to move on to item number 10, which is considering the adoption of a resolution approving the contract with Teamsters Local 320, the lieutenants, for the bargaining unit for the period of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2025, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is agenda item is to consider the adoption of a resolution approving the contract with the Teamsters number 320 Lieutenants Bargaining Unit for the period of January 1 through January 2024 through December 31st, 25. The city staff has completed the labor negotiations with Teamsters number 320, the lieutenants. Provisions for the 2024 to 2025 labor agreement cover all 3 lieutenant positions. A 2-year contract provides for the following changes: an increase in vacation sellback from 48 hours to 64 hours to match the non-union policy, and to increase the total annual holiday leave from 96 hours to 104 hours because of the additional Juneteenth holiday, to include the same employer-provided health care and dental insurance contributions as given to the non-represented employee groups, and wage adjustments to include 3% cost of living adjustment and an 8% market adjustment for the top step in 2024, and a 3% COLA and a 1% market adjustment for all steps in 2025. The higher starting pay is consistent with the wages required to compete in the historically tight market for law enforcement personnel. And so the motion before we make the motion, staff, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Thank you again. Zach Tomon, the Assistant City Manager. I'll make it quick. I know tonight's been a long night for everybody, so I'll make it quick. I just wanted to thank the work of our HR manager and also the support of our city manager in this process. And I'll state it again, like I stated in the previous meeting, I continue to be very impressed with the police department, especially the leadership from the police department, from the chief all the way to the support staff within the department. There's a lot of dedication, passion, professionalism for the city of Richfield, and I wanted to continue to state that, and also to thank the lieutenants for working with the city and continuing to be a vital part of the city. So thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
So I would move we adopt the resolution approving the provision of the 2024 to 2025 labor agreement with the Teamsters number 320 bargaining unit, and authorize city manager to execute the agreement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I would like to just thank everybody that was involved in the process on both sides of the table, and I'm glad that we are reaching resolution here. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we have adopted the resolution. Next, we will be moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I will email these answers to Mr. Ernster. One of the questions, the first question is, what documentation declares that the state level micro-unit ordinance specifically applies to home rule cities? Our city attorney answered that. I answered that. Again, I'll email it to him, but it was in the definitions in the statute. 3 supportive housing developments, I'll repeat the questions too. 3 supportive housing developments, Penn Station, MICC Compound, Astor Commons, require 14 buildable lots. My questions are, after they are built, which ones will be paying property tax? Property tax exemptions occur through an application to the county. A state statute sets the standards for exemptions. Information is available at the county's website. And while the city does not make this determination, none of the proposals would appear to qualify. The question is, which ones will require additional taxpayer support and assistance? We're not clear exactly on what he is asking about for additional, but the information is that the 3 preliminary development agreements between the HRA and the developers of the Penn Station and Astor Commons projects that agree to provide up to financial assistance in the form of the money from the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, $500,000 and $485,000 respectively, as well as the sale of properties at a reduced cost. There are currently no other pending requests with the city or HRA for financial assistance. There is no request for financial assistance related to the MICC project. And how are the additional taxpayer support going to be budgeted and generated? The money has been budgeted and is available in the HRA funds. The 2040, this is a question, the 2040 plan intends to rezone 33 residential homes around MICC at 75th and Morgan to MR2. What is the city's authority to rezone residential homes This is a power provided to and prescribed by the state statutes, Chapter 462. Have you notified residents of those 33 homes of the intended rezoning? Notice of the public hearing regarding the 2040 comprehensive plan was published in October of 2018. If and when the properties are to be considered for rezoning, notification will be sent directly to the impacted properties. The city policy has been to avoid rezoning until there is a proposal for a redevelopment that requires it to allow the greatest flexibility of current uses. Do you plan on forcing sales of using eminent domain to gain ownership? The city cannot force sales of private property. Eminent domain may only be in cases of public use or purpose as defined in statute, Chapter 117. No public use or purpose is proposed for any of these properties. And the final question is a rhetorical question.
Thank you. Is there anything else in your report, or just those answers for open forum?
Just for those answers. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on then to claims and payroll.
I would move claims and payroll.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded twice to approve claims and payroll. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we have successfully approved claims and payroll. Moving on to hats off to Hometown Hits. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you. This is your reminder that between now and our next meeting, starting on September 20th, is actually the start of early voting for the general election already. And so if you are an election nerd like me, you will get excited about early voting. And then the only other thing I had, but I am guessing there are others who will want to say it, is that this Sunday is PennFest. And so encourage people to attend, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councilmember Christensen.
Yes, there are two things before we gather again, and one of them is PennFest. And it's a great celebration. They are still looking for volunteers to help out in 90-minute shifts, to help out the vendors, that type of thing. You can go on richfieldpennfest.com to find out more about that. And then the only other thing is next Saturday, the 21st, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Richfield History Center at 69th and Lindell will be a gathering of local authors again this year. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Hafer O'Leary.
I just wanted to share my excitement and my thank you to the Transportation Commission and our Public Works Department, and especially those who've been working on Nicollet Avenue. I noted in the meeting, I'm the liaison to transportation, that I'd been in different hats involved in that commission for 11 years as a liaison, and talking about the exciting moments of 66th Street and Portland Avenue, and that this was one of these other big chapters of them recommending a preliminary layout for Nicollet that we're going to be seeing at a future meeting. But it wasn't until after, and I really wanted to note it, it was actually 10 years to the day that they had recommended the 66th Street layout in September 3rd, 2013, or 2014 to 2024. So it was pretty cool that they were recommending another sort of major street that also was really based on public input that will also make a huge difference to a large section of Richfield. So I'm really excited to see the project moving forward. I'm excited with the work our staff has put in and the county staff. The county has shown really more flexibility and a more open mind than they did on 66th Street. So I think this is going to be even better, but of course we'll be discussing it more at our next meeting. But thank you so much to the staff who made this happen and the transportation commissioners. And I'm not going to name names, but there's a couple that have been like from the beginning to the end of every public meeting, really present, really showing up. I notice it. I know that the staff notice it and appreciate it. And I'm just grateful for the time that they put in for our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for all our staff and especially all our volunteers that are making PennFest possible. Thank you, and this is the Great Richfield get together here, and so come on out on Sunday, and also in our last week we had the opportunity to just begin to see some of the great work our contractors and team members have been doing in putting together a vision for our new Wood Lake Nature Center. And it's just stunning. Due to some health problems, I haven't been able to walk around Wood Lake this summer. This week was the first time I was able to do that, and it was just extraordinary, and really grateful that we have a park like that, and that we have an opportunity to put a place where people can enjoy it there that I think generations from now are going to really appreciate. Hats off to our recreation team and the architects that are visioning with us.
Thank you. And I'm going to reiterate a hats off we did earlier in the meeting and say thank you again to Director Verma for all that you've done for Richfield and all of your hard work. And we get to see a lot of the fruition of that tonight with all the various reports. So we appreciate that. I also wanted, do a shout out to Penn Fest, and I think we all know that that's going to be fabulous, and we're all going to be there on Sunday. And I believe it's 1 to 5. Am I correct on that? Yes. 1 to 5, and it's fabulous. And I haven't looked at the football schedule, but usually it's better if there's not an actual professional football game going on at that point. So I think hopefully we can all be at Penn Fest and nobody will be watching football. Finally, I want to do a plug for the Farmers Market on Saturday. That's the other place to be in Richfield, so please come to the Farmers Market. With that, we have reached the end of our meeting, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.